All right, hey, Chem 30s, it is Manchak back again, and we're going to start moving on to our next lesson. So you guys, at this point, should have finished off sort of our first half of the second unit, electrochemistry unit in Chem 30. You should have finished up balancing using redox, or balancing redox reactions and doing your redox stoichiometry stuff. Now what we're moving on to are our next concepts, where I've told you before we're going to get into learning about some of the practical applications of what's going on with respect to all of this stuff we're learning about redox reactions. So we're going to get into talking about what's going on in sort of the practical applications. So this next series of lessons and videos are going to get a little convoluted and a little strange, and so I'm going to sort of run you through this document that you can see on the screen here, and I'll post this on the Google Classroom as well, just so that it makes a little more sense to you. Concepts B7 through B9 have a lot of overlap in them. And so it can be, the notes themselves can be a little bit confusing, because you get into the very first thing after B6 is a small fill-in-the-blank section of notes that you guys will do on your own out of the textbook, just introducing to you to cells and batteries. Fill those notes in, because do that first. Fill them in. Make sure you read the textbook textbook stuff for that section, because it will preview what you guys need to know for moving on in B7. Now this overlap that we've got has to do with the fact, just sort of the way the curriculum is structured. And so I built the overlap in a little bit, and normally in class I would face-to-face tell you this, we'd walk through it together. What I'm going to do now is I'll just quickly open up the concept checklist that we work our way through in the course, and show you what we're dealing with. So B7, B8, and B9 I'm going to kind of do all together over the next series of videos that we need to go through. B7 talks about electrochemical cells and being able to define all of these parts of an electrochemical cell. Now, electrochemical cells come in two forms: a voltaic cell, which we'll talk about first, and best example of a voltaic cell is a battery. And then the electrolytic cell, on the other hand, which is not the opposite of a battery, but different from a battery. So voltaic and electrolytic cells are both considered to be electrochemical cells. So B7 is basically dealing with electrochemical cells. You'll talk about voltaic and electrolytic cells. You'll be able to label one of those cells, identify all the parts, and then predict and write the half reaction equations and the net equation that's occurring for that electrochemical cell. B8 is all about cell potentials, and cell potentials give us an idea of the amount of energy that might be generated by a battery, or the amount of energy we might need if we're dealing with an electrolytic cell, something along those lines. And so we will deal with these standard cell potentials in concept B8, and this is where we'll get into just a little tiny bit of relatively simple calculations associated with that concept. And then B9 kind of bridges the two together. And it's really where we're going to talk about what is similar and what is different about electrolytic cells. And so we're going to look at the, what are the commonalities between the two, and what are the differences. And I'm going to say this now, and I'll say it again 100 times more in this section, maybe not quite that many. But their electrolytic and voltaic cells are not opposite to each other. They're different from each other, but they're not opposite to each other. You can't say that a voltaic cell has this and an electrolytic cell has this, and they're opposite. They're not. There are some things that are very similar in the way they operate, but there are some subtle differences that we need to know between them. So that's what we're going to be going through, and so I'm going to kind of teach all of these concepts all at once. We're going to start with voltaic cells. We'll talk a little bit about cell potentials and introduce that. Then we'll move into talk about electrolytic cells, which means that we're going to kind of go from B7, then into B8, and then we'll go back to B7, and then right at the very end in the last video that I'm going to do with the electrolytic cells, I'll talk then about those similarities and differences. Okay, so there's a little bit of confusion in there, and I just want you guys to be aware of that. So I need you to start off, before you move into the video on voltaic cells, which is going to introduce voltaic cells to you. I need you first to go in and do the lesson that is entitled Technology of Cells and Batteries, and get that done. It's really quick. Read through your notes, or read through your textbook, fill in the blanks in your notes, and I've kind of highlighted the spots that I want you to have done. It might take you a half hour or something like that to get through it. Then move on to the voltaic cell lesson. And then what's going to happen is, the way I've structured it right now, and I haven't recorded everything yet, but this is the way I think it'll go, is you'll do that. This will be the first video in the series of lessons for B7 through B9. Then you'll move on to the voltaic cell video. It's actually a video I recorded last year because I missed a day and recorded a video for the class last year. So same notes, same recording. Just be aware I make mention of, your sub has this. Just ignore that part of it, that kind of thing. I'll have a video also associated with that on YouTube that you can watch that talks about voltaic cells as well. Then I'm going to do probably just one more video after that on cell potentials, and then follow that up with our discussion of electrolytic cells, and then I'll tack on at the end a quick discussion about B9 and something called the chloride anomaly. I will also put a lab in after we finish voltaic cells, after we do the cell potentials, I think. Or maybe before that, I haven't quite decided yet, but we'll do a lab as well. It'll be a virtual lab. That may also end up being after electrolytic. I haven't decided yet. I'm playing around with some ideas that I'll get to sometime later this week, and put it up for you. So be aware that there'll be a virtual lab coming in there that'll have you exploring voltaic cells and actually hooking up some voltaic cells virtually using an app online. There'll be worksheets associated with all of this as well. So there are 3 line masters that I will highlight for you guys along the way, as well as another worksheet full of diploma questions that you guys can practice with. And then I'll put up probably 2 of those formative practice assignments on the Google Classroom for you guys to do before you look at doing a quiz. And I haven't decided if we'll do 2 quizzes, one on B7 and B8 and one on B9, or whether we'll just do a big B7 through B9 quiz. We'll see how that goes. Probably just B7, B8 together and then B9. So I think that's all I have to say in this one. This will be posted on the Google Classroom as well, and it outlines resources and assessments and other things that you guys might need to get your hands on. Things that'll help you out, some extra videos that I've come across. There's one here. I'm actually going to record myself using my cell phone doing an example for you, just to give you an idea of what it might look like. I think I found a way I can do that relatively easily. And then this is all your formative practice. It mentions your lab, and then I'm still working on it, and then you'll have your summative quiz. So that's just a really quick introduction to the B7 through B9 and how that's going to work. If it gets confusing, come back to this video again and have a look at what's going on in the video. I guess the only other thing to mention is we do have one more concept left at the end here, concept B10, which will be in a separate lesson and something that you'll be covering next week. So don't stress too much right now about concept B10. It'll be actually relatively straightforward. We'll jump into stoichiometry again in it, and I have to teach you one or two more formulas that you need to know, but they're not more difficult than anything you've done so far. So that's everything I have to say. Thanks for listening to this one. Again, as always, if you have questions, pop online for my office hour every day. Fire me an email. Anything you need to get your little extra bit of help, I'm there. Track me down. Okay? Stay healthy, take care of each other, and we will talk very soon.